and welcome to Carly Talks Music. This is a as weekly as possible video blog about just talking about something musical. I apologize for being on kind of a hiatus for these past 2 or so weeks, but that's because it was the holidays, which were wonderful, busy, and stressful all at the same time. And with my new job, it is technically retail, and so my hours were ridiculous, but in a good way, because more hours, more monies. Anyway, so this week I want to talk about something that I've actually wanted to talk about before, but I didn't know if anyone would be interested. But about a week and a half ago, I talked with somebody that seemed interested in it, so I'm going to talk about it now. And that is similarities that I see between classical music and modern electronic music. So as most of you know, I play the viola, and I've played it for like 11 years. So classical music is, and I studied music in school, classical music, so it's a big part of my life, but I don't get to express it or talk about it or listen to it as much as I want to, just because of the time that we live in. It's just not, if I lived in Vienna, I could go see classical music stuff all the time. But being here in the United States and in Texas, classical music isn't a big thing. It's still there and it's still wonderful, but it's obviously not what it used to be. But the reason is because of all the new types of music that have evolved and come out of what classical music used to be, And one genre that I feel is really similar to classical that is ridiculously modern is electronic music. And the similarities that I see is that when you're producing an electronic track, you are thinking about one instrument at a time and then how it interacts with other instruments. Not that if you're in a band, that's not what you're doing, because that is definitely what you're doing. But like as an electronic music producer, it is one person usually creating all the parts the same way that a composer used to. There are still classical music composers today, don't get me wrong, and they are wonderful and their music is fucking cool. So check out some of the modern composers out there, modern classical composers. I lost my train of thought. Oh, but anyway, electronic music producers these days, like, instead of writing on manuscript paper, you're on your computer screen. And it's still kind of the linear fashion with a bunch of staves, one after another, but it's tracks instead of staves. And so that's just one way that it's similar. And when I think of, or at least because I've grown up with classical music and playing classical music, I feel that electronic music fits with my brain in a way that other music doesn't, because of how it's created. It's similar to how classical music is you've you're thinking classical music, you've got your strings, your brass, your percussion, and then any other things that you wanted to add in there. And then electronic music, it's usually like your beat, your synths, and other shit you want to throw in there, and to me, electronic music is kind of the modern classical music, if you're thinking about like music revolutions, kind of. Because back then, in like Mozart or Beethoven's day, they didn't really have the type of music that we have today in terms of like rock or blues or stuff like that. Definitely not electronic music because they didn't have freaking computers, but they created on their manuscript paper. So I like to think of a good DJ as a good conductor. If they're doing their own music, like they're the ones, they see it from start to finish, like a composer would if they were to conduct their own piece. They're the ones that create the song, create the tracks. Man, I wish I should have had like a whiteboard to be like staves, tracks, la 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 la. But I hope you understand anyways. So the conductor to me is like the DJ. It's, again, if the conductor were the composer, which sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And another similarity I see with classical and electronic music is that back in the day, like really early on when classical was really starting out, old composers used to take ideas from other people's music and put it in their own. That today would be called a what? A remix. So another similarity there. And also back then they would play a bunch of different people's music at a concert. So say a composer was also the conductor, they might play their own piece and then maybe someone else's pieces. And that's very similar to how DJing is now. They might play their own stuff and then mix in some other people's things, get back to their own stuff. It's just cool similarities that you like. I mean, they're not exactly the same, obviously, but the stuff that you can do with them is super similar. So this is kind of cool. No, I mean, let me know what you guys think about similarities between classical music and electronic music, because I know that there are more, but these are kind of the two big things that I picked up on. Was that, back in the day they used to use other people's melodies or something and add it into their own music, which are now what we would think of as remixes. And then the way that it's constructed, it's classical music was written, one line at a time for each instrument, or like if you're thinking about a chord, you put it into different instruments, how you want the chord to sound based on voicing. And that's the same way that you would create a chord in electronic music, just on a computer and not on paper. Thank you guys so much for watching. This one's a bit rambly, but whatevs. Also, thanks for listening, besides the fact that my voice is totally gone, which is really sad, because I've been wanting to record and sing, and Lisai. Thank you so much for watching.